Welcome to Become a Business Badass podcast. My name is Miranda Pierce.
I'm Dr. Tim Pierce.
And today I want to talk about money mindset because something happened to me this week, a story that I'll share with you in a bit, but it really triggered memories, not too distant memories, of when I had a bad money mindset in business that would manifest in me offering too many discounts or too many follow-ups, free syringes, not knowing my worth, all of that stuff. And I know that you guys watching this here now, a lot of you really struggle because let me just read out one thing. When I recently I did a survey of you guys and someone came back and said, I struggle with feeling bad about charging what I need to in order to cover minimum cost, never mind making a profit. And someone else said, I worry about ripping people off, pricing and consultation fees, regular clients. And I think this holds us back in business clearly because business is about making a profit and profit is the lifeblood of a business. So before I go into my story, tell me, did you ever used to struggle with those kinds of things?
Absolutely. And it's one of the most common things that people do struggle with right at the beginning. You think, I'll just start a business and I'll make some money. But then to actually see the white of someone's eyes and to take their money is a whole different thing to thinking you'll start a business. And some people have a different background. Like if you've got business people in the family, that helps. And it helps you if you have already taken money in other walks of life. Like either, I always think the dentists are a little bit better in the UK because they understand it. They've been doing it since the beginning. But if you're in the public health sector, you might struggle with it. And even if you're not in the public health sector, there are plenty of dentists who also struggle with it over certain price limits. Mm-hmm. And essentially you're confronting it's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, of what is value, what is your time worth, what are other people's decisions worth? Is it okay to make a profit? Like you confront all sorts of philosophical problems which our culture propagates, which I don't think are necessarily the truth of how money works. But I'm sure that's what we're going to.
Let me illustrate that by diving into this story, and then I think we should go deep and talk about that societal thing, because I think that's what's been below it all. Mm-hmm. So I haven't really told you this fully yet, but yesterday we had our mattress delivered and we've just moved into a new house and it's a beautiful house, and I've honestly it's a 5-bedroom house, we've come from a 3-bedroom house, we've done well, and this is the manifestation of it. And I've literally had to have a couple of therapy sessions about moving into this house because I've come from a very left-wing background where there was a subconscious assumption that if you're doing well, someone else is doing worse because you did well. So it's almost this Robin Hood principle. And what happened to me yesterday was we had this mattress delivered, and the guys, we have gates in our house, which might not be weird in America, but in England, that's quite unusual. And first of all, the mattress guys couldn't get into the house because of the gates, and there was lots of sort of calling and texting, and it felt a bit almost like embarrassing that I was having to kind of let them into my house with the gates. And then when they got in, they knocked on, they were really sweet, both of them, really, really sweet. And I offered them a brew and a cup of tea, and we were really immediately connected. And then the guy looked up into our hallway, and we've got a really nice stairways with a big staircase that goes off into 2 different directions. People have said on my Instagram, staircase goals already. So, I know people are liking my staircase. And he said, ooh, it's like the McAllisters in here. And I laughed, knowing emotionally what he meant, but I didn't know what he meant by the McAllisters. I said, what do you mean? And he said, off of Home Alone. And it's so interesting because Home Alone, we all saw Home Alone in the 80s, the film, and we all thought, bloody hell, they're rich.
Yeah, what does his dad do?
Yeah, I saw a meme about that, yeah. What are the McAllisters doing to be so wealthy that they can take all of their 16 gazillion children to Paris for Christmas, And so then I immediately felt shit. I felt shit because this lovely guy who was delivering my mattress, thought I was rich. And then everything that comes with that word rich and all of that.
Everything that comes with it, that's interesting.
And then later, on his way out, again, super sweet. I could tell he liked me. But then on the way down this staircase, he's saying, "Oh, I feel like I visited the Queen." And then he said, "How was your Jubilee?"
He sounds amazing.
Yeah, he was lovely, and he was laughing with me, not at me. But I was trigger.
I think this is the thing is you're layering lots of meaning onto it, which I'm listening to the same story and getting a totally different vibe, which is this guy's up for a bit of banter, and you could have just laughed with him with that. But your own internal battles get stirred up by it.
Exactly. And so back to
I want to explore that with you. I want to know more about like what does it mean to you when someone says you have a house like the McAllisters or something? Like what is the first thought that pops into your head?
I know because I've done therapy on this. I feel like people will think that I think I'm better than them.
So it's the status thing. So your status is higher than them.
And I worry that they think that I'm la-di-da and I think I'm better than them.
Yeah, that's slightly different to whether your status is higher than them. You think you're better than them is different. Are you comfortable with if on some level they thought you were really good at something that you did?
That'd be fine, yeah. Absolutely fine.
So it's that because that's a form of status which we're comfortable with. But you're not comfortable with this. Is it unearned status or something? Is it because for me it seems like there's a lack of connection between those two things, because I think you could walk into a house or someone who's doing well and think, wow, they must be really good at something that they do.
And he might well have been thinking that, but I think this, coming back to you guys watching this here now, I know that you'll relate to this in this moment when you try and ask for money from a patient. I don't want them thinking that I am robbing. Like, I want everyone to be equal. Pardon?
A grifter is the modern word. It's a left-wing term for it.
Oh, right. Grifter, as in that I sort of steal from one person and that...
It's essentially that it's a con. Like, all of capitalism is based on a con. That would be the far-end extreme of it.
Okay. But in my simple emotional mind, I'm thinking that I want him to know that I really value him and that the existence of my big staircase doesn't devalue him as a human. And I think it's that separation I worry about, that they think I'm going to think I'm in a different tribe to them.
Yeah, I mean it is interesting because I don't feel that way. I can't quite get my head around it because I just have a different feeling about it. I don't know exactly what it is. I need to try and figure out why I don't get that anxiety at the moment.
Well, could I make a suggestion? So, Tim, you're South African. You grew up 14 years in South Africa, and in England, and I imagine this translates in different ways in different parts of the world. It's a very hierarchical structure. Like, we used to be like the feudal system where it was like the aristocrats and then the middle class, the tradespeople, and then the whatever. And it's like, actually, when you first came to England, you people in the comprehensive school that you went to were like, ooh, you think you're better than us because you. I
had it from both sides. I had people who thought I was better than them because I didn't have a northeast accent, and then I also had people who thought I was way worse than them because I came from Africa.
That you had lions and tigers.
I
in
literally
your garden.
was called a apache, which very confused me so much because I'd never even heard it as a racist term, and also Pakistan I think is further from South Africa than it is from the UK. Yeah. So it was very strange to have the, but yeah, you get it. I did get it both ways. But I remember my dad got an NHS car, a Peugeot 306, nothing fancy at all, but it was brand new because it was a lease car essentially. And I remember walking home with a friend and he suddenly looks at my car and went, "Ooh, M-Reg, posh, get you." Exactly. And that was the first, and that was very confusing from a South African perspective because it would be looked up to, not derided on any level. Yeah. So there was a little bit of that going on. But the same with achievement. I remember being called a swot because I got 70% in my physics test or something, and then that was also very confusing. It was like, you called me a swot. Is that a good or a bad thing? Because where I come from, it's quite good to do well on exams.
Yeah.
So, but you know, it was kind of mocking because when I look back at a lot of my friends from that school, a lot of them done really well. So they are aspirational, but there was that other layer of something that's and this is what I wonder about this guy who came in. I mean, a lot of the tradesmen who come to our house are aspirational, and a lot of them are killing it as well.
Absolutely,
It's a great time to be in those trades, and this would be the bit that when there's so much to unpack with the emotions. I want to understand. Like, is there a different way of viewing your fear? Because what you're saying is you want to connect with people and you don't want them to not love you because they make assumptions about what you think of them based on the fact that you've done well in an area of your life.
Yeah.
Because there's so much fiction in that. Like, actually, but I understand where it comes from because there's decades of little comments from friends at school and things your parents say and all that sort of stuff you read. And almost certainly that guy, he obviously felt comfortable enough with you that he could make a few jokes. He wasn't on his best behavior.
Yeah.
You know, he was, if anything, slightly irreverently teasing you, which is a sign of him being comfortable with the situation.
Yeah.
And actually diffusing any awkwardness that you might have.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be thought of in terms of what's actually going on in his head. We'll never know. But would he like a bigger house? Of course. Does he feel like on some level, if you've got a big house, that you're the reason he doesn't have a big house? There are people like that, but he doesn't sound like one of them.
No.
So this is one of the things, you know, I think we, particularly in the middle classes, you make up all sorts of stories that just aren't true in most people's minds. Most people aren't actually that bothered. It's just interesting. It's another part of their day. They go to a rundown house where there's underpants on the floor, and then they go to a nice house, and it's all in a day's work.
So bounce off that then to people watching here now, probably have had, or there is a high likelihood that they had someone in their life say something even just slightly snarky about their ambition. So let's say that, say for example, someone's here watching this, a nurse, and they were a National Health Service nurse, and now their friend from school says, I hear you've been doing aesthetics, you know, and they judge them thinking like, oh, who do you think you are? That kind of thing. That I know people experience.
These are the people behind all of that mentality that you are. That somehow in your background, you've picked up some resentment of the rich. You know, and just remember, it took me a while to figure this out as well. In fact, I saw someone share something online about how you shouldn't share your family photos at Christmas because some people haven't got families at Christmas.
Or loads of presents and
And I remember thinking, like, I was really jarred by that because I was enjoying them, and I thought it's nice that the people in my network are happy and that they're, you know, even if then we know that's not the full picture. Everyone's lives are complex, but I felt like it gives you something to aim for. And I also used to be, as a kid, really into cars. I used to buy car magazines. We only recently moving, had to throw out a load of them. And, you know, most of those cars, I didn't actually assume I'd be able to afford, but they were certainly an inspiration to me. Like in my earlier years when I was 18, I didn't assume it was even on the cards. But I loved reading about them, and I loved thinking. And when I'd see a nice car, I would want to go and have a look at it, and it inspired me essentially. But then I've had conversations with people in my family where the total opposite has been the case, whereas they immediately feel angry and resentful about the guy with his nice car. And that's also part of my background too. And I'm sure, hopefully, I imagine that in America it's different. They seem to celebrate success differently. But those are the two outcomes that come when someone sees something of value. And to make it real for aesthetics people, that can be a beautiful person, or it can be a person with a nice car, or someone with a nice house. There are basically two emotions. One is inspiration, and the other one is, well, there's also complete nihilism. You forget it. You've let go of it, but you're at peace with it. You don't think it's on the cards for you, but you're okay with that because you're happy in other ways. Or there's resentment, in which case, which are the people who really want it, which is what's interesting, because I don't think you resent someone having a nice car unless you really want a nice car, but you haven't got one.
Yeah, or you don't feel like you've got the means to build towards it.
Or it's one of your rules that you think it's conspicuous consumption. It's another word that's come up in my family network. where it is essentially that it's a low status thing to do within the network, particularly of intellectual people. It's like I have loads of books on display and I drive a green car, that gives me intellectual status. Whereas if I buy a Lamborghini, that means I'm a bad person. Yeah. But it's not the money; it's about the communication that they perceive goes with it. But the key thing is you cannot have something of value without some people resenting it and some people being inspired by it, and a lot of people not giving a stuff either way. But you're afraid of the people who resent it.
Yeah.
You're ignoring the fact that he might have felt inspired by that trip.
Yeah.
To do an extra shift, to move his own house, to get, to redecorate. Who knows what
Start
happens.
up his own business.
Yeah.
Well, how do we then, because how this manifested for me, this mattress example is one of many, or I suppose I haven't had the sort of the rich person example until I became successful more recently. But like when we were building the business, I think I self-sabotaged the success to some extent of our business because I wanted to stay in the safety of the people that I knew, or even because I mean, I've got different friends of different wealth levels. It's not that I'm particularly they all merge around one, but I just definitely, I didn't want people thinking I was a dick. So I think maybe we didn't raise our prices enough, or we might have, given away a lot of freebies. And it's that moment where you don't want someone to think you're, like this person said, you don't want someone to think you're money grabbing. So let's put ourselves into that moment now.
Well, one of the things I was thinking as you were talking about the house situation is for whatever reason, I don't identify with our house as being part of me. Like it's a separate thing. I've lived in awful places. I've lived in nice places. In South Africa, we had a pretty nice house with a pool, but I've also lived in a northeast 3-bedroom semi with cardboard walls that was tiny. And none of those houses are me. I'm just passing through. One day we'll leave this house and I'll go into a coffin or something, or we'll downsize and live somewhere else. It's not me, the house. But it's a bit like that with your prices. If you can dissociate yourself from the prices, which is much easier if you work for someone else. I mean, I've always noticed this when we started employing doctors to work for us, and dentists and nurses, that they all would be much more comfortable with not discounting than I was, because they had no option. I set the price, I'm the boss, I can change any of this on a whim. Whereas they can't do that. They need to come and negotiate with me. So it's much easier for them to state certain prices. But one of those reasons is because there's no confusion between the price and them. It's like the guy at McDonald's he's not going to wince if you say, God, that's an expensive burger. He's like, yeah, whatever.
Deal with it, yeah.
not that you would at McDonald's, but the point is that he's not the price. And that's what's hardest for solopreneurs, is when you first start out, you have actually set the price. You're now offering it to someone. And on a level, you're offering yourself and they're valuing you back. But also built into that is that the higher they value you, the more guilty you might feel, because you know that you could change that price slightly. And
that's the thing. It's the knowing that you can. It's the get out clause. It's completely it's too much in your gift. And I think it's the same with giving away free syringes or follow-ups when you shouldn't and stuff. There's no freaking policy.
Yeah. I think it's an illusion that it's in your gift, though.
Yeah,
but it's a very real illusion, because because if you do the mathematics on what it takes to run a successful business over 5 years, not over a day, because over a day you can lose these things, but over 5 years, the biggest mistake people make is they don't realize that you need to be paid a wage, and that's not your profit. A lot of people, when they first start out, think, I paid £100 for my product and I'm selling it for £200, so I'm making £200 an hour. You are not making £200 an hour. You are decades probably never going to make £200 an hour, because there's so much other stuff that takes into making that moment happen between two people. I mean, we only had to look at our admin staff to clinical staff ratio, and you can see how much energy goes into things that aren't about making money. They're just about organizing the process so that you can eventually, hopefully, make money.
Or marketing even.
Yeah, so there's marketing, there's business administration, there's all the stuff you can write a long list on. And what happens in the new injector's mind, including me, when I first started, was I thought, I'm going to be here for half an hour, I'm going to make £500.
That feels wrong.
It feels wrong, but also feels free. It feels like I can get free love here by giving them a £50 discount. Because it depends on what what your drivers are. But most people, I mean, when you break down the human needs, most of us at the top end want to be loved by people on some level. And some people want to be, they think they're going to get loved by being the most arrogant fuck they can. So because then you think, oh, you're very clever and therefore they'll love you. So it doesn't mean that you're always a gentle, kind person, but your rule for what it means to be valid, it might be that I'm generous. So if you value yourself, if you think generosity earns you love, kindness, you know, I'm a massive sucker for a crying female. Like I've realized once that I was really basically diddled by a patient who was young and, you know, doing really well on Instagram and stuff, but she just started bawling her eyes out because she didn't like her skin. And after saying that she couldn't afford anything for it. And I was like, you do not have to worry about this money. I'm going to rescue you, crying female. And I gave her all sorts of things going. And then as she was leaving, I saw her and her mum laughing. And it was too soon, you know. And I just had this horrible feeling that I'd just been manipulated out of something. It was my desire to rescue someone. Yeah. And that's also another thing you learn, not to rescue. But it's the point is, what often happens in the consultation is you're not focused entirely on money, because in your life, money is not how you get love.
Yes.
You get love through generosity and kindness and time, and all those things are great and you should have them. But if you start to buy them with discounts, you screw your business and you eventually screw yourself, because you become resentful. I mean, Exactly. How many times do we see on forums people saying, I'm just not sure it's worth the stress?
Exactly.
The stress is real. But if you triple your prices, it suddenly becomes worth the stress. Yeah. And this is what I often think is people are working really hard. They don't want to make too much money because then they feel guilty. So they discount and they make friends with all their patients first by buying that friendship through discounts. And eventually they get fed up with the actual work because they still have all the same risk and all the same overheads as everyone else, but there's no reward and they're not taking their kids to Disneyland.
They get burnt out.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's why you absolutely need to get in touch with the real value, which what I was breaking down before, which is that your wage has to be part of your costs. Like if you think could be earning £30 an hour on a banking shift, like go and build that into every client appointment. Don't imagine it's part of your profit and you'll get it later. Think about once you list all these overheads, the most important one of all, which I don't think anyone speaks about, is that you should feel inspired by that end price. You should feel excited about taking the risk. That's really what money is compensation for risk and time, not just time. It's also the risk and the skill. Because if you don't look at your pricing structure and think, God, you know, that is worth getting up on a Saturday for. I'd love to come back home knowing I'd made X amount of money that I can do something for my kids with. If you're not getting that feeling, then you're already onto a losing path. Like you should feel inspired. But all of that needs to be built in.
But I think as well, like I'm excited about making X amount of money on a Saturday, like you said, so that I can. And I think that take the kids to Disneyland, etc. And someone once said to me, it's the most amazing advice. She said, if you look at a patient and you ask yourself the question, would I give them £100 cash if I met them on the street? If the answer's no, which of course it is, because who would you do that for, unless they were like homeless or something, then do not discount them. Because that is, you are literally robbing yourself you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I think we don't think about it like that. We think, oh, we don't really believe this price. I think that analogy with the employed people who work for us at Skin Beaver, it's almost like good cop, bad cop. Like they're the good cop in front of the patient and the bad cop is the prices. You know, sorry, Gov, like them's the prices. And that's almost how the single-handed practitioners should feel. They should be like, those prices are fucking like, they're set in stone. Sorry, it's not me, Gov. It's the prices.
I will say something else though about that, which is when you deliver your price, if you have these mindset issues, you see it on the person. Because I've had this as well and realized as I became more confident in delivering my price, more people said yes.
Oh right,
even though the prices were going higher and higher.
Yeah.
Because what if you deliver it apologetically, which people do because they think they're being kind, like I or they don't want to be rejected, and they're like, yeah, it does mount up, doesn't it? You know, this will come. Any sign at all that you are not confident in that price is interpreted in that you are not confident in the treatment. You're actually not confident in the value. Now, this is something also really worth separating, is value and price are two wildly different things. Every patient who's ever given you money has valued your treatment higher than the price you're setting. It's worth remembering that, because you don't hand money over if you think the price is more than the value. You only hand it over when you think the price is less than the value. And that, if you can really internalize that, you realize that for someone who's having their lips done, like £300 or whatever your price is, to feel the way they anticipate feeling if you deliver that is nothing. It's cheap because the feeling is amazing.
That's what you mean by value. Tell us what you mean by value.
Well, the value is something that the consumer sets. It's something the market sets. It's not something that you can set in your clinic. If you set your price above the value, no one's going to buy it from you. But the consumer sets the price. So each time they decide to buy something from you, they're saying, it is worth this to me. And that's the unique thing, is it's worth this to me. In my current situation right now on this day, it's worth it to me. That is very different to saying what your prices should be, because people pay. I mean, I spoke to someone who was on a cruise and had 3 hours of Botox done on a cruise. She knew in the UK that she could get it for 200 quid or whatever, but she paid £800 for it. And it didn't work, which was the downside. But I was like, why did you do it? And she's like, well, because I was on my cruise. I wanted to do it then and there. And I was like, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because the value there is different. And you've really got to start to see prices in terms of value. And then actually the whole money mindset follows that, because someone said this to me when we were in America. I was talking about how a lot of my family hate Jeff Bezos or whatever. And he's like, how can they hate him? Think about how much value he must have delivered in order to get that rich. And I thought, and he's right. You have to have delivered something. And in fact, he told me that the average family saves about £3,000 in time every year because of Amazon. And that's like suddenly makes sense. Like, wow, it's so much easier and quicker to do it, that you're saving loads of time. That's where the value of Amazon is. Now, it doesn't matter. That's just one way, because I think that's what happens with people. Even people who hate Amazon use Amazon because it's so valuable, because they can't help but see that it's going to save them time, and they value that. We have to get in touch with the value of our treatments, not the price. And that would be the core thing that happened to me over time, because I would consult my patients properly, listen to their stories, hear what happened in their lives when they came back, and suddenly you realize that the value is off the charts compared with the price that you're charging. And then it starts to get easier to just state your price. But you have to believe you can deliver as well.
So that's I think a really great place to end it. Just give us that again. Like, what one thing could practitioners watching this do to make themselves feel that they are and their service is more valuable, so they don't end up in a situation where the mattress guy triggers them? I mean, by the way, I do think I'm valuable, but I was running an old pattern based from the past. So
like on an interpersonal level. I mean, I do think I would love for you to be able to connect the value to what you have, and not because you wouldn't have that house if you hadn't delivered value to thousands of people.
Yeah.
And as soon as you can have peace with that, you can be okay with it, and also not assuming that he's unhappy about it, because a lot of people are like, we've got a guy over the road who's got 15 cars, and I'm really happy for him, and I can't wait to get in one day when he's not sick, and I can make contact with him again, is to go and see his cars. And I'm never going to have 15 cars. It's not on my list. But I'm really excited he has. And he might assume differently until I go and show him that I'm excited for him. In fact, one of my earliest experiences like that was with my best friend, who got a sports car when I was 18, and I had nothing. Like I think I got given a car, an old Vauxhall. But he had this fantastic sports car, and I was the only friend who was really enthusiastic about his car, and I got benefits I wasn't expecting. He used to pick me up from school. But the point is, don't make assumptions about other people feeling negative. A lot of them are inspired.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of your closing question was around.
So give practitioners something practical they can do to understand their value.
So it's asking your patient getting to the heart of what they really want in the first consultation. So your treatment is to create the change thereafter. This is central to everything I believe about aesthetics. It's the internal transformation that is valuable, not the external transformation. If you make someone from a 5 to an 8 out of 10, who's that bringing pleasure to and power to? I mean, you're not really sure unless you've had a good consultation with what it is they're trying to do in their lives with that power. And so you need to pay attention to what their real motivations are, and then ask them if they can achieve it. The simplest version of that is, I've just been divorced, I'm going on Tinder, I'm not confident, I want a treatment to make me feel confident. And then you find out that they've met someone and they're in a happy relationship. I've got loads of those stories. And then you think, okay, how much does it cost to get yourself back into a relationship? £200. How much is it worth? It's priceless. And that once you're in touch with that and you're going after that goal and you're not selling filler, you're selling those internal transformations that enable your life to change, all the price conversations end. Yeah. Because the whole conversation is about, what can I do to get you back in a relationship and happy and thriving? Let's talk about it. That's a whole different thing to how much money have you got to spend, and can I do that with 1 or 2 meals? You're aiming at a way deeper and more important thing. And when you achieve it, I laugh in the face of people who think what I do is superficial and hasn't got value to it, because they don't understand what they're talking about. And I know it because I've experienced it thousands of times.
But because you asked you consulted them first and found out what their true needs were. But then when they came back for their next treatment, you said, how did you get on with that life transformation? And then they told you, oh my God, yeah, I was dead confident at the interview. And that tactic made you feel more confident.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry we can't keep going on, because I want to go back around what I can do to help change your perception, and also explore why I simply don't have it anymore. I did have it more. I just lost it for some reason. But yeah, it was interesting. Yeah,
we've got to go and pick up the kids. What do you guys think about this topic? Do you struggle with money mindset issues? Do you discount when you shouldn't? Do you give free syringes away? And what do you think about this idea that actually, if you really believe your value more, you won't get triggered as much? And what would you have said to the Queen comment? I don't blame him, to be fair. All right, join us next week. Excited to have you. Take care.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.